Hey guys, Montel here, and welcome to this edition of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. My guest today is an author, a filmmaker, an advocate, an entrepreneur focused on empowering aspiring leaders in a rapidly growing legal cannabis space. She's a Navy veteran, having received the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal for her dedicated service as an aviation electronics technician from 2010 to 2014. She went on to earn her master's degree in business administration and information systems. She's here today to talk about her experience and her new book, The Successful Canna-Preneur. JM Balbuena, thank you so much for joining us here on Let's Be Blunt with Montel.
Thanks, Montel. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your background. You were born in the DR, the Dominican Republic,
Yes,
right?
yes, I was. I came to America when I was 13. And I've been here, doing my thing and taking advantage of all the opportunities, and especially now in the space in cannabis. So,
Sure. But let's back up
really,
before we talk about cannabis. Let's talk a little bit about your stint in the Navy. What made you decide to join the Navy?
I always it was kind of like my dream as a kid. Like I always tell the story. If you look at my pictures when I was a little kid, my favorite outfit that I had was of a little sailor. But I graduated high school. I wanted to join. I graduated shortly after 9/11, so my family wasn't too fond of that idea since we were at war. And so I kind of put it in the back burner, went to college, got out, graduated from college, started in corporate America, did not like it. I was very bored in corporate America and didn't necessarily develop a passion for anything there. And so payments started to come back, and the military offered a loan repayment program, and that was my excuse. I said, well, I'm going to join. And so I did.
Did you go in as an officer or you go in enlisted?
I went in as enlisted, actually. That was the loan repayment program was for enlistment.
Okay. And, now while on active duty, so where did you serve?
I served under my command was VFA 41. So we were a fighter jet squadron. And I was stationed in NAS Lemoore in California.
Gotcha. You deployed on carriers?
Yes, the USS John C. Stennis. I served 2 deployments on board of that aircraft carrier.
Pacific deployments?
What was that?
Pacific deployments?
Yeah, Western Pacific.
Ah, cool. I was on the USS Kitty Hawk in the Pacific and Indian Ocean.
Oh, I didn't know you were Navy.
I was Navy and Marine Corps. I did 22 years in service.
Oh, wow. I had no idea. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you for yours. I was listed in the Marine Corps, went to the Naval Academy, got commissioned as an officer in the Navy, and then was a special duty intelligence officer in the Navy until my service was done. So I had a pretty extensive career.
That's awesome. I had no idea. That's something new.
We got a lot in common that way, huh?
Right.
We have in common that while you were on active duty, you had an accident and suffered a traumatic injury, right? Talk a little bit about that. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was working on the flight deck and was walking behind an aircraft, and it went up on power, and it the power of F-18. So I was blown by it. I landed on my head first. My cranial actually snapped in the forehead area in 2 pieces. So you can tell the magnitude of that. From that, I lost the English language. Fortunately, my first language is Spanish, but I couldn't speak English for like a good half an hour. And I, when you know that you can do something, but like it was completely disappeared from my brain in that time frame. And that's when they realized that I had suffered, that I was concussed. And needless to say, the pain and the back pain, my rib cage was like what was hurting the most. Because I was a plane captain at that point. It was my first deployment, and I was carrying chains. I was gonna ground the jet to do an inspection, and walking behind it, For some reason, the pilot went up on power, and it just became a situation after that. But
A lot of people don't understand that. I want to give some of our listeners a little idea of my deployment in the IO in the Indian Ocean. We had a couple guys literally when a jet sits on an aircraft carrier. First off, people have to understand this is like a plane on a postage stamp, okay, in the middle of the ocean. And this thing's got to put when they go to full power or they even go to just start the engines. There's
mhm,
a blast that comes out of the rear of that aircraft that is so powerful that it can literally on a deployment that I was on blew a guy overboard,
right,
lifted him up, threw him 40 feet off the side of the aircraft carrier.
yeah,
Like, well, are you kidding me? No. And I mean, so it's a very dangerous. I mean, and
yeah.
being on an aircraft carrier, I don't believe there's a more dangerous, 100 square yards than anywhere else in the entire military. That's
I
Air Force.
mean, it's like top 5 most dangerous places to work at.
No ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, if people saw what you guys do, the fact that you run underneath of running airplanes and roll inside them, and it's
Mhm,
insane. So now,
yeah.
how long did it take you to recover?
So, I actually recovered quickly, to be honest with you. I didn't break any bones. I didn't so the only thing that I had was like the pain, and then the from that day on, my sleeping pattern was completely disrupted. That and it stemmed from that because before that it was never an issue. So I wasn't sleeping, and the funny thing is that I wasn't telling anybody. I wasn't associating it to the accident. I just would go back to work. So they just gave me about 3 days off to recover from like the pain because obviously it was kind of hard to move with all the pain and when wanting to do my work. But from there I would just work even more. I don't even know how to explain it. Like I couldn't sleep. So at first I was going to work out. You know how it goes. You're deployed. You really have nothing to do. I'm in on my rack, just like doo, 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 And so I was like, well, let me work out. Let me like try to do something. And before working out, I was mostly working at the job, and they were like, aren't you night check? Why are you it's noon, why are you still here? I'm like, I can't sleep. And so my leading petty officer was like, we need to take you to medical to get that checked. And from there, that's when they started doing all the studies to see like what was going on. And you're deployed, it's bare minimum care. And then once I got back from deployment, that's when I went into full-blown physical therapy, and they were doing a lot of studies on my brain to see if there was anything going on. But from that they really can't do much but just monitor. And mostly what they did was try to control my sleeping situation so I can actually rest through the night. And they just kept putting me in different medications because some of them were highly addictive and some of them, can cause other things. And eventually I just got out of the military.
Were you medically discharged?
No, I was not. So by the time I did my 4 years and I got out, and then it became the VA's uh, study now. So every year I have to go into so they can scan my brain and to make sure that everything is still okay. But the only thing that's what pretty much led me to cannabis. So coming out of the military, I was dealing with the lack of sleep, and that would led to the most tension that I've ever experienced. And I again just not putting two and two together, and the fact that I'm not sleeping, and then I'm having anger management issues. I'm having relationships problems, with my family, with my partner, and it just became super dark. And somebody was like, you need a joint.
Mhm.
Smoke in this joint real quick, and maybe things will tone down a little bit. And they did, and it was not something that I was expecting because I was never like an avid cannabis consumer. I did consume cannabis while I was in college, but not necessarily a thing that was I was like, oh, smoking weed is so cool or anything like that. I would just do it at parties and things of that nature. And in that moment that I smoked that joint with another veteran who had just gotten out, and he was also dealing with certain things, and cannabis was helping him. And I was like, I felt like myself. Like I felt again like no tension, just like things were funny. And I thought to myself, this is what I want. This is how I want to feel. And I was like, with or without cannabis, I want to feel that way because I felt like myself. And so I started looking into it, um, dealing with my own stigma of, the this gateway situation. Am I going to be uh, going into other drugs or anything like that? That's how, ignorant I was about the plant and the potential for wellness. And it just went down the rabbit hole from there. Met my business partner, who was actually, and at that point it was 2015. He was looking into getting a license to do a cultivation here. And when I met him and he told me about that, the rest is history. I was like, yes, let's I want to get more into this and learn more about it.
But I mean, it's for a lot of people, TBI is one thing. That's something that's just and you're noticing that right now so far it's been most of the rest of your life so far that
Exactly.
and there's PTSD that goes along with that.
Right.
A lot of people would not be able to start thinking about becoming successful business entrepreneurs. Excuse me. How do you think that I mean, what is it in you that you think sets you apart from some others?
I would say my background. I come from a family where my mom, my dad, they all had their own businesses. My uncles, uh, they've all started their own businesses or partner up to start a business. And when I saw the opportunity, the first thing I talk about this in my book, The Successful Canna-Preneur, were the first time that I went to a dispensary and I saw the traffic. I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Um, this many people are here. I'm calculating as I'm walking the amount of people waiting to get checked in, the amount of people coming out of the sales room. And it just, from that moment, I was like, wait, this is an actual viable product. And when I did, once I went into the dispensary and my gears are grinding about the situation, a month later, that's when, I manifested meeting my business partner, and he's talking about, the funny thing is he's at my home. He was a plus one at an event that I had, and he's smoking blunts like back to back, like chain smoking almost. And I jokingly, I said to him, you either work in this industry or you have to grow like your own. And he's like, a little bit of both. And then we started talking about that. And that's when he was throwing around the word legal and cultivation site and this and that. And I was like, we need to talk more. And
Gotcha. What was your entry point? Did you started off in cultivation, then you went into dispensing, or did this person have a fully vertical license? What?
no, so at that point, he was helping a Native American tribe create their program. And I came in helping him do that. So I'm not a cultivator. I started more on the administrative side of things, helping him put together that ordinance for the Native American tribe here in San Diego, and then helping to manage the compliance of that. So that's how I started. At that point, I already had my master's degrees, and that's the how I told him, like, I want to help you, and the way that I can do it is, in the business side of things. He gave me the opportunity, and and later on we just became partners, and we've been rocking ever since.
And so, what's the business now? Do you have your own licenses, or are you still consulting
Yes.
others, or
Yes. So right now we have our Jack's Cannabis is our retail brand. So we have a dispensary. We also have a manufacturing facility
where's
um,
that, where's that located?
in San Diego.
Okay,
San Diego, California. Yeah, we've been operating our dispensary since 2017, and the manufacturing licenses we got late last year, and we're operating there as what it's in here in San Diego as well. And we have two other licenses for retail that we here in San Diego as well that we are looking to build out and open up here towards the end of the year.
gotcha. And now you just wrote this book called "The Successful Canna-Preneur." Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about this book.
So the Successful Cannapreneur is my story. Like I was mentioning earlier, I started as a patient, then became a professional in the space, and then became an entrepreneur in the space. And the reason why I wrote that book is because once I was in the trenches, I realized that the space is so dynamic, things are changing so fast, and people come in and out like super quick. And my purpose with the book was to paint a picture from like an operator standpoint, from the viewpoint of a woman of color, because that not necessarily was something that was viewed as like an operator didn't look like me, essentially. So I thought it behooved me to tell my story, and give people like me a voice. But most importantly, I also wanted to paint a picture that was accurate, and not like sensationalizing cannabis or the industry, but mostly because I wanted the reader to get that clear picture, and then attract high quality individuals, high quality entrepreneurs, high quality investors, high quality professionals that want to know the ins and out, from the viewpoint of somebody that's been doing it for a few years. And so I wrote the book. I wrote it actually 2 years ago, during COVID. I had a little more time to my hand, and I decided to just sit there and write it out. So most recently, I just got it translated into Spanish, because then some of my family members, like the older people in my family, they were like, "Well, they don't speak English that well." So they're like, "What can you? How are we going to read the book?" So I was like, you know what? Great point. Let me let me translate it and make sure that the Spanish speaking community also has access to this information that's super important. So the book is now available in Spanish, and you can get it on Amazon.
Oh, it's on Amazon right now? Okay, good. Now you talk about, how prohibition was a opportunity, if you will, in your book.
Absolutely.
How so? Talk about that.
Well, prohibition is an opportunity because look at now, I think it created a barrier for people to come in. So right now, because prohibition is still ongoing at the federal level, I feel like the opportunity is that it gives us still some time to create a more solid foundation before these, huge companies come in, because that's what they're waiting on, for the federal prohibition to be removed, and then they can come in and come with all guns blazing with all the access to capital. But I think like right now, that barrier to entry gives us the opportunity to continue to build upon a solid foundation, that when they come in, we already are cemented on the ground, and they have to work with us in order to participate. So that's why I feel that way.
What do you think some of the biggest hurdles are for cannabis?
So I would say for people of color, for instance, we have the same issues in that other industries, the lack of access to capital. Then at the beginning, when most of these ordinances are created, they don't want you to have um, a, a criminal history. And most of the people that want to work in this industry may have already had a conviction because, of the status the Schedule 1. So that, you have to overcome those hurdles. And that how we do that is with the advocacy, with the education, because most of these people that are creating these ordinances, they don't know cannabis. They are creating these ordinances based on, the benefit of their city, and how they're going to make money. And sometimes, the ignorance just creates these hurdles for entrepreneurs. But I do think that coming together, as teams, like for instance my business partners and I came together. He had all the experience in the world because he had already been in the space for about 20 years, growing on the legacy side, and then on the license side here in San Diego, and then working on the Prop 215. And then I came in with my business acumen and my entrepreneurial abilities from, growing up in a family that had that, and then the educational background, and then here we are. And mind you, let me tell you, personal hurdles for us was at some point, like back in 2017, 2018, we had a vertical integration. As far as licenses, we had the cultivation site that I spoke about in the Native American tribe. Then we ended up getting another cultivation in Humboldt. We had a manufacturing facility in Santa Rosa, and we had our retail here in San Diego. And mind you, we were not getting funded. We were pitching and putting together a business plan of vertical integration, and $0 came our way. And then we just put our head down, kept working. Because of the lack of access to the capital, we had to let go of some of those assets, because, as you know, it's super expensive to be able to run that together. So in order to grow it, you need the money. And so we just went back to the drawing board, and, knew that we wanted to be here for the long run, and just, used our creative vision to create a plan that would make sure that we were still here. A lot of the companies in 2017, 2018 that were getting funded are not even here anymore. And we still are. So, that speaks volumes about the grit and the um just the tenacity to keep going even when things seem like they're not going to work out in your favor.
And it must be really, really tough. You keep talking about your partner, he, but
Hmm.
I'm looking at she, and you are very few, one of very, very, very few
Hmm.
African American females in this industry nationwide.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the hurdles that you faced, being a woman of color, trying to just make this happen.
I mean, yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough to be taken seriously, I would say. Especially at the beginning when there's less of us in the room, and most of the time I was the only woman in the room. Fortunately for me, like working with my business partner, he never necessarily, that was never an issue in our company. As a matter of fact, right now, mo- the, all managers in our company are women. We are very focused on the fact that we need more women making things happen. Also, the fact that we need the veterans. Most of our managers are women, veteran, and we understand that women get things done,
Mhm.
and that we need that opportunity, and we are doing that as a company, just giving women the opportunity to to display their abilities, and it has been, and we don't regret it, put it that way. But I would say outside of our little safe space, it has definitely been difficult. I do think it's getting better. Why? Because there's more women that are creating their own opportunities, just like we have done here with Prime Harvest in our company. And
You got it again.
getting better.
What's the name of the company again? One more time.
Prime Harvest is our holding company. Jack's Cannabis is our retail brand and dispensaries.
Okay. And I think a lot of people don't really understand. I mean, just what's it like for you when you you have to go to one of these meetings and you're sitting in a room? People must look at you and go, "Where the heck did you come from?" Kind of thing, right?
Yeah, they do, until I start talking and they realize the power behind the experience. And then I look super young too. So looking young, and I'm not that young, I'm 39 years old. So
You look young.
looking looking young, and then not necessarily the person that they're expecting. A lot of the times they just have the expectations, but once you step into your power and your experience, and then you're saying the right things and just providing solutions, there's nothing really anybody can do to stop you. So
You've also talked a little bit about the fact that in the cannabis industry, it's not just about touching the cannabis. There's so many other ancillary areas in business that people could consider that they may not know about. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one of the ancillary, it would be a company or a service that actually supports the industry. I mean, touching the plant, that's one thing. And number one, it would be the most expensive way to get into this space nowadays. But, there are so many needs for the industry to be supported, like, let's say, accounting. We don't speak enough about how much or how important it is to have an accountant that's versed in 280E, that can actually help you navigate that so you can actually run your business in an efficient manner financially. That's super important. So that's an opportunity for somebody. You don't need to become a grower. You don't need to become, a manufacturer. You don't need to have a brand, but you can make you can make a name for yourself by actually providing a service that supports the industry. I mean, look at tech. There's so many different tech aspects, like POS systems, marketing systems, and all of these don't speak to each other because there's a lot of different companies. And I'm speaking, from an operator's standpoint, and the things that we need, right? So there are so many little aspects of the industry that people can participate in, and provide a service and have uh, use the cannabis industry as a niche to provide a service. And if you provide a service that is great, you will have a lot of clients. So I think it's super underrated. It's super underrated, when people don't look at the industry as maybe, and this is what I recommend, and I say this in the book, is look at the industry, study it, find a problem, provide a solution, and you'll be a part of it. You'll be a part of it, and you'll be a part of it, and you'll be able to make a well financial situation for yourself, by providing a service and solving that problem.
Tell me a little bit about this new, you got an online show called Cannabis Synergy. Tell me about that.
So Cannabis Energy was my first production, and we haven't done it since COVID. So it was an event, a talk show, event format talk show. So I would bring, sort of like what you used to do with your talk show, where I would bring I would bring people that were doing things in the space, and we would talk about their experience. Like, for instance, our first episode, we had Colin Wells. He runs an organization, a nonprofit called Veterans Walk and Talk. So the way that I did it is I invited his organization. They were the audience. He was one of the guest speakers, and we discussed like veterans of in cannabis, and not only cannabis but psychedelics and how that movement was going on. So we also had music, we had the consumption side of things, and just an educational experience for people. We also, some of our episodes included talking about social equity, talking about cannabis and pets, and things of that nature. So it was super educational. And then we had the live audience component. And so when COVID happened, we had to do away with that. And so we just started creating pre recorded content to educate.
Is it still running now?
No, so now we are focused on doing more marketing content, and then my documentary that's based on the book. So that's where we decided to pivot when once we couldn't do it anymore. So that the documentary, we are doing our final filming in the next couple of months, and we should have that available towards the end of the summer. So
And
we're
what
excited.
would the documentary be called? What would the documentary be called?
The Successful Canna-Preneur.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Tell me about this BSW, this boycott shitty weed. What is that all about?
So Boycott Shitty Weed is pretty much my creative advocacy outlet. I started the brand. Funny thing, let me tell you how Boycott Shitty Weed started. When I started Cannabis Synergy, I was having a lot of problems getting sponsors. One, because I didn't have that much experience in filmmaking and creating events and things like that. And so I created my own brand to sponsor my own show. And that's how Boycott Shitty Weed started. So the brand, it's just an advocacy brand, and we use um, merch, we use graphics, we use content to revolutionize advocacy. Right now, we created metaverses to showcase our different, the different, uh, the different. Uh, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank here. I apologize. But our different collections that we put out. So, like, for instance, the first one was just Boycott Shitty Weed awareness campaign, in which we just decided to promote what does Boycott Shitty Weed means. It means, obviously, quality matters when you're consuming. Being intentional with your consumption, like for instance with me, I needed to control my sleeping, so I, telling my story in that sense, and then just bringing awareness to the fact that in cannabis, shitty weed might also mean, that there's a business that's not supporting social equity. So that, just taking it not just from the consumption, but just looking at the industry from just a different lens. And then our second collection was called Propaganda. And that one, uh, we highlighted the heroes versus villains in the space. So we talking about prohibition and who contributed to making cannabis illegal and criminalizing drug abuse instead of making it a healthcare situation, which is really what it is. And then showcasing the heroes like Dennis Barone and people that Jack Herr, Bob Marley, people that actually brought awareness to the fact that this plant has medical benefits, that this plant has a lot of potential for sustainability and things like that. And then our third collection, the most recent one, is called Vipers, and Vipers means stoner. But Vipers was a a term coined by the jazz community, and people of color at that point, which were the people that we're highlighting with this collection. They used cannabis for creative purposes, to freestyle when they were, creating music, but also to deal with the racial relations that were horrible back in the 1920s and 1930s, given that a lot of them were super famous. They can only perform in front of white audiences. They can only, they had to come in through the back even though they were the main people. And then cannabis helped them to deal with that anxiety, and a lot of them were super vocal about it. So each one of the collections, just tells a different story of how cannabis has been a part of the culture. And that, with Boycott Shitty Weed, we expressed that with merch, we expressed that with content. Most recently, we created metaverses, in which, if you have your VR goggles, you can walk into the spaces and see the different stories that I just went over. So, it's something that I have a lot of fun with. It's super creative, and we've built a really cool community around it.
Well, you mentioned social equity a couple times, but where do you think this industry is headed when it comes to social equity? Because I mean, I think we are headed. From my perspective, is that you said it yourself. I mean, I think it's only a matter of time before you know as we get more and more states that come on board, the Fed's going to have to do something, and
Right.
if it does do something, it's going to be something that's going to, I think, push a lot of what these concerns for social equity are right out the door. As if people don't care. And I think by the time the Fed decides to say yes, I think that'll be a no to social equity from that point forward. Personally,
I really hope it's not that way. I do think a lot of states are taking social equity very seriously, especially because there's a lot of advocates doing a lot of great work, to make sure that we get a piece of the pie. Like, I'll give you an example. Here in San Diego, as it stands right now, there is no social equity program at all. And so the licenses that we've gotten, it's, on our own accord, putting in the work. Fortunately, we've been following this license processes for a while, and being very focused and making sure that we're involved when things are happening. But only most recently in the past year, they have taken social equity matters into their hands. However, there are people working really hard to make sure that it's a fair process, that it's a fair situation for the beneficiaries of these programs. If you take a look at New York, I feel like because New York, because New York is setting a standard, like just recently they approved, I think it was 99 licenses for social equity candidates. um and I would say this, I'm glad that people are getting access, to the licenses, and to having assets that can potentially create um legacy for their businesses and things like that. But still, running a cannabis business is still really a really tough situation because of 280E, because of the different aspects that still super, like I was saying earlier, with the POS system, and then you have the metric system, and then you have the other systems, and they are still super clunky. And so you have to have a very strong team in order to be able to efficiently run all of that together. And it's not easy. But I do think, like for instance, the San Diego program, they have taken that into account, and even the how expensive it is to operate a business like that, and creating programs to be able to assist in these different areas where the hurdles are still preventing people from running a successful business. And I think because of that, it might be, it might be a good situation. Now, when the feds remove the plant from the schedule, and other people have access and the money to buy people out and do all these different things, yeah, that's highly concerning, I'd say, in my opinion.
When, if you had to put your crystal ball on, when do you think would put a crystal ball on and tell me what you think the change is going to come?
For federal prohibition to seize,
Yeah.
you know, crystal ball.
Mhm.
I would say in another like 5 to 6 years. I think a the president that takes on this issue, they're gonna have to deal with letting the people that are in jail for this out of prison first. I mean, there is no way that federal prohibition is removed and we still have people in jail for this. I feel like that presents a huge issue, and a liability for lawsuits and all types of situations that I don't think.
That's if you think that people care. And I'm so sorry. I say that, and I don't say that trying to be facetious, but it's like, do the masses really care? I mean, they've used this as a reincarceration tool, and an incarceration tool, a re-enslavement tool
Hmm,
for so many for so long. It accomplished what a lot of people wanted, and that was putting a lot of people of color in prison.
right.
So now, if they decide, well, we switched the thing, we're going to make it legal, we'd have to be worried, or we'd have to think that the people who are not in prison or look like those people. Let's remember that people of color only make up, depending on which way you want to define that,
Hmm.
African Americans only make up 13% of this nation's population. And you add to it Hispanic people of darker skin
Hmm.
added to that. Now you're talking about 20, 25% of the population. So there's 75% of the population who may not even give a damn. Let them say.
I think they care. I think people care. I do think most people understand that this plant is really not something for people to be in jail for. I
Well, I would say something, and I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but I have
Mhm.
been
I'm an
optimist.
optimist, so we're
You know,
gonna keep going back and forth here.
I've been an optimist in this business for a long time. But let me
Mhm,
explain something to you. I've been doing this for 20 years.
mhm,
I didn't get into this 5 years ago. 6 years ago when everybody decided this was the green rush.
Right.
20 years ago, I started my advocacy, going from state to state to state to state to state, trying to make sure that patients had
Access.
efficacious medication. That's what I started on back. This is 2000.
Thanks for doing that.
Well, I know, but now it's 2003, 2023.
Yeah.
Well, 23 years later, we're still sitting here having a discussion about possibly when might this be made legal. So I'm not a pessimist, but I'm also, and I look at the way this nation is divided. I mean, look what just happened in Tennessee. You know what I mean? Look at the way this nation is divided. We live in a nation where, when children die, black people get thrown out of legislation. Excuse me. I'm just, it's like, when are we ever going to get an opportunity to move the needle in a different direction? I don't know. And again, you're right. As pessimist, optimist, I would go back in my optimistic way, but I don't think that this is going to be. It's going to take probably 15 to 20 years before the majority of this nation says, you know what, we messed up when it came to this, because that's also another thing.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why.
Accepting.
That's
Accepting the responsibility that of the mistake.
Cannabis is part of the reason why cannabis is fought in so many places, because to say that we should make it legal means that we made a mistake for 70 years.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who don't want to say they made a mistake. We
Mhm.
lock them darkies up for a real good reason. They want to lose an opportunity to just go, remember, we go into certain communities, make people turn their pockets inside out, find a joint, they put them in jail. Go into
Right.
other communities, do the same thing, they take it and go your merry way.
Or even harsher drugs like meth or
Sure. Sure. So I know, but it's good though. I just wanted to feel where you think this may change. Anything else in the industry you want to talk about?
I can talk about something that we're doing that would give people access to investing in this space.
Cool. Tell me that.
WeForThePeople.com is, our company Prime Harvest just got approved or qualified by the United States Securities and Exchange Commission to raise capital under Reg A. And so we created our campaign to do so, and it's called Weed for the People. And anybody interested in investing in this space and in exchange for equity, they can check out weedforthepeople.com to see the benefits of being a part of our company at the ownership level. And we're super excited about that. And so that is pretty much how we are resolving the lack of access to capital, and just building a community of investors who care about the industry, who want to be a part of the industry. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to be a part of cannabis and not necessarily be an operator, but they can own stake in an operator in a business that's expanding throughout the state of California. And so we created this campaign and worked really hard, to get this qualification. And we're super
When
excited
you
about
talk about throughout the state of California, now California is rapidly getting a really bad reputation
it.
in a
It's tough
sense in the industry, because you've got such a black market and gray market.
and what's doing that is our regulations. Our regulations are making it super tough for operators. But I told you who we are. We don't give up, and we find, we use our creative vision and just our tenacity to keep going, and our passion to be in this space, and to actually create a sustainable business opportunity for ourselves. And now we're opening it up to our community. We started, right now we're campaigning with our customer, because think about this. This is our creative genius. We're at work. We're thinking, if we get our customer to be an owner, like actually own stock in our company, they won't shop anywhere else. So now we have a customer for life, and also a marketer for life, because now whoever they talk to, hey, go shop at my dispensary, go support my business, because they actually have skin in the game. And so that's just our way to create a situation that's beneficial for everybody.
Super unbelievable. And if people wanted to find out more information, where would they go?
Well, for this would be weedforthepeople.com. You can find me on LinkedIn and all the social personally. So JM Balbuena. You can buy my book, The Successful Canna-Preneur. It's available on Amazon. It's available wherever you can buy a book, digitally or hard copy. Also, it's available on audiobooks for my audiobook people. And like I said earlier, it's available in Spanish as well, para mi gente que habla español.
My goodness, thank you so much. I hope and wish you well. Look forward to talking to you again down the road. If something comes up, you want to be able to, chop it up a little bit, give me a call back, okay?
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. Super fan, by the way. Thank
I
you.
really appreciate that. Thank you so much. You take care of yourself and make sure you tune in to the next edition. Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments.